All righty. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're so excited. We're going to get started just at the top of the hour here, so just give us a sec. All righty. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and get started with our session. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're so excited to be here with Rew. If you don't know me, my name is Sammy Focarino. I'm the Senior Events Manager here at Consensus, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's session. You guys can see my slides, right, Rew? Everybody, somebody say it in the chat. I'm going to go with yes. It says I'm screen sharing. All right, this webinar is presented by Consensus. Consensus is intelligent demo automation software that helps scale sales organizations with interactive video demos. You can learn more at goconsensus.com. So we're still taking a couple more responses for our sales engineering workload and compensation survey. If you have a few minutes, we really need as many responses as we can to make sure this is the most accurate report that we're going to put out next year. If you haven't seen the report this year, you can head to our website and check it out. I'll post the survey link. You can also scan the QR code, but I'll also post the survey link here in the chat. So we had an absolutely amazing time at our DemoFest X events this year. We were in San Francisco, London, Dublin, and we just wrapped up our last event in New York City last week. Rew was there. We had some awesome speakers, and we're already excited to be looking at 2024. So we're super excited. Keep your eyes on your emails and also on our social medias to find out where we'll be next year. I know I can already announce we're going to be in San Francisco. Date is set to be announced here really soon, as well as registration. So keep your eye on those emails and sign up for them as soon as they open. We're so excited for 2024. Okay, we encourage you to participate in today's webinar. There's going to be a couple different ways you can engage with us. That webinar chat is going to be really great. We'll have some polls. If at any time you guys have questions, go ahead and drop those in the Q&A box. Rew's going to be answering questions throughout the session, so there'll be a couple times for us to field him some questions. So make sure to put those in the Q&A box so they don't get lost in the chat. If at any time you're having technical difficulties, go ahead and press the help button on the right side of your screen. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Rew Dickinson is the CEO of Alpha Presales, a training company that helps sales engineers go from being geeks to being confident client leaders. Rew has done engineering, PS, sales engineering, and sales. He believes that sales engineers are the secret weapon to enterprise sales. And with that, I'm going to turn the rest of the time over to you.
All right, great. Thanks, Sammy. I'm still a geek, but I can also do some selling. So we're going to have some fun during this presentation. This is not going to be just a presentation. You're going to be part training, part interacting. So before I kick into it, I want everyone to grab either your phone or just go, if you're on the computer, go to menti.com and then put in the code 59335011. I'll leave this up for a second, allow you all to join. We're not going to do this right away because we're going to start off with a little bit of whiteboarding. So drop it in the chat if you are a whiteboarder. I feel like you can't have a sales engineering presentation without doing some whiteboarding. All right. So per usual, we're going to draw some pictures here, and you all get to look at my terrible art. And I'll explain what's going on here in just a second. 100% whiteboarding. We got that from Linda. Awesome. Yeah, I feel like it's a sales engineer's favorite activity. All right, so what's this crazy stuff that I'm drawing over here? Well, I'm going to draw a little situation. We're going to tell a quick little story about why storytelling can be valuable. So let's see. No whiteboarding, mostly demos. It's clunky to go back and forth from live and whiteboard. Agreed. So actually, one of the reasons why I do things with this is because I don't have to share slides or anything. We can do whiteboarding and we can do slide sharing without having to swap back and forth. Roy, great. Love whiteboarding. So I want you all to imagine for a second that you are going on a hike, and maybe you're in the Pacific Northwest and it's you and it's one of your friends, and you're over here and you want to do this hike, but you have heard that the bridge is down between the one side of the hike and the other, and there's a big river underneath it, but you really want to get over here because you've heard that the view of the waterfall from right here is incredible. One of the best you've ever seen. So you've got a little bit of predicament, but you know what? You're just going to try it out. So you're going to go on this hike with your friend. And as is normally the case, when there's an opportunity to sell something, entrepreneurial salespeople pop up. So I want to use an example to talk about why storytelling is valuable. And if you've ever been on a hike or been anywhere, you've probably seen folks show up. Oh, look at this. We got Iguasa Falls. I love it, Peter. You've got folks show up that are selling different things. And so we're going to label these people as certain types of salespeople. And the first one I'm going to talk about is the feature salesperson. Now, if you're going on this hike, you know that you need to get across this cliff here and get to the other side so you can see the waterfall. So you show up and now you're walking along and you see a vendor there. And this salesperson is selling some bags of chips and some other things. And then they've got some wood planks and they've got some rope that they're selling. They say, oh, hey, do you want to buy anything? And you look around, you say, no, I'm all right, thanks. And you pass. So you keep on walking. And then you come across the benefit salesperson. And the benefit salesperson is a little bit different. They know a little bit more about the product. They talk about some of the benefits of it. And so what they do is they're selling the same wood planks and the rope, but they know the details and they say, yeah, these wood planks can be used for bridges and they have maybe 500 pounds they can support, or I think that's about 225 kilos if we've got folks in the UK or elsewhere. And the rope, yeah, that can hold around 10,000 pounds. It's nylon, really strong. And so they get into a little bit more of the details, the benefits. And you look at it and you say, well, actually, maybe that would be useful, but I'm not sure. I got to kind of figure this out. Do I want to do this or not? So you just continue and you move along. And now you show up and you find a different salesperson. And this person is the solution salesperson. And the solution salesperson is pretty unique because rather than selling these parts, they're just selling a bridge that's got rope on the top and planks on the bottom, and you can just throw it from one side to the other. You look at that and you're thinking, that sounds like exactly what I need for this. I don't know. I mean, how sturdy is it? How much time's involved? Can I set it up? Do we have time to do this? Do we need to get to this waterfall? You know what? Forget it. I'm just going to pass. And then you move along and you meet a fourth salesperson. And this is the story salesperson. And the story salesperson is a trained salesperson. So they'll ask you a couple of questions. Oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, good. We're going to the waterfall. Oh, you're going to the waterfall. So my friend Doug, he just went this morning. He said it was incredible. Say, oh, Doug, how do you get over there? Oh, he just used this. Do you want it? He's selling the exact same solution, but he's selling it as if Doug has already made it across there. So now you look at it and you say, wait, so this is everything I need, and Doug's already went across. Yeah, I'll take it. Maybe you have a question or two. Well, how much did Doug weigh? Am I sure this is going to support me? But it's way more appealing. And so what I'm doing here is I want to show how you can sell in a number of different manners. I used to be a feature and a benefit sales engineer, sales rep. I would get into the details of the product. it's not to say that you can't sell, but when you think about it, what happens is you create this, what I call sort of the think scale. And when you're up here and you're selling features, the brain has to think a bunch about whether or not they got to put it together. You got to do what one of my favorite sales reps told me as a sales engineer. You can't make the customer make 2 leaps of faith or 3 leaps of faith. They have to go from the feature to putting it together to making sure it can hold to knowing that they're not the first person that's ever done this before. And so they don't want to take that next step. Versus when you go down to stories, you don't have to think. You just have to trust that you're in the same situation Doug's in. And so that's where stories can be really valuable, because it decreases the amount of mental load that you got to spend evaluating a product. So this is where it's not to say these other options are wrong. It's just there's certain ones that are easier to get the customer to move to the next step. So I wanted to give that illustration because you may be up here or here or here. And, you know, a lot of people are saying sell outcomes, sell results. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And then if you can wrap it in a story and provide some proof, that's even better. All right. So that's a quick thing. I like this. Mark, be like Doug. Like it too. Full of lines. Story are generating emotions and are such better than anything else. Yeah, absolutely. The emotional bit is something we'll talk about today. Okay. So I am going to share up our Menti here, and I'd love to get some interaction from folks and figure out where everyone is from and what all your backgrounds are. So I will share that on screen.
Oh, there it is, the Menti code. We had a couple people asking about the Menti code, so I'm going to go ahead and I can barely see it, but I think it's 5933511. Yeah?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Holy smokes. All right, we got results already. So we got a lot of pre-sales, a lot of pre-sales leadership. We've got some sales. We've got sales leadership. Enablement, great. Enablement folks. Oh, marketing folks, wonderful. Thank you for showing up. I was very worried. I was joking with Sammy. If I say this is how to sell more without sounding like marketing, would I anger too many marketers? So maybe I have, maybe I haven't. Marketers, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. We got some professional services, customer success. That's great. I got a little story on that for later on. Awesome. All right, let's go on to the next one. So we've got, want to know, how long have you been doing your current role? How much experience do you have? 5+, some 2 to 3, some 1 to 2, some 1. Oh, look at this. This is great. All over the map. I love it. Continuous learners. This is awesome. All right. A lot of experienced vets. I love this. Yeah, screw that. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I say BS. All right. Love this. Let's go. Let's see where people are calling in from or dialing in from. Where you at? Pin this on the map. Got a lot in the US. We got some India, UK, EMEA. Oh, Colombia. Wonderful. Somebody's hanging out in the middle of the, looks like Indian, maybe even Southern Ocean. There's a little fun fact for you is how many oceans are there? I was taught 4, but apparently there's a 5th now. It's the Southern Ocean. All right. Oh, look at this. Giame, we got 15+ years. I love it. Demoing on a boat. Dalen, I love that. Great. We got some Canadians. Jeff in the house. Paris. All right. Awesome. Yeah, great spread all over the place. Okay. Next up. I want you to say, what's the first word that comes to mind when you hear storytelling? I've realized this is a slightly polarizing topic, so I'm very curious. Narrative, success, fun, connection, entertainment, kids. Yes. Oh man, all over the place. I can't even read it. It's going so fast. Personalized, long-winded. Yes. Compelling. Disney, not surprising. Book, bedtime, engage. Presentation, cheesy. Anecdote, story, relating, context, journey. Difficult, agreed. Captivating, communicate. This is awesome. All right. So connection's big. Interesting, entertaining, fun, engagement. I love it. All right. Next one. Oh man, you guys are killing it. I love this. All right. And what do you hope to get out of this session? Curious to get that. Learn skills, inspiration, education, new ideas, how to craft a story, how, new insights, new idea, peer insights, think different. Oh man, I'm going to keep these coming. You guys rolling in. We're at, wow, look at this, 150 response. Geez, we've got a turnout today. I love this. Let's see what's going on in the chat here. Next wave after GPT. How long should a story been? Good question, Dave. My view is that if you are in sales, it should be short. The context is important, but I am not a big fan of long-winded stories. They say, no story can be too long as long as it's engaging. I think that is completely false. Keep it short, get it to the point. Wow. All right. 190 responses. This is great. Inspiration, ideas, skills, learning, getting better, growth. I love it. We got some learners on here. I am excited. All right. We are going to move on. And what I want to do is take you through a little bit of I'll call it market research that I've done. And before I do that, I wanted to just give you a quick introduction to me. So this guy right here definitely didn't tell any stories. This was me a number of years back, developing software in a cubicle in Springfield, Virginia. We would come in every day at 10 a.m., not because we were lazy, but because we would work until midnight when the servers would go down and then reboot, and then everything would be super slow. So we'd go home then and then wake up, chug coffee, and then show up to work every day. So it was a lovely experience. But one of the great things about this experience is it gave me a lot of product knowledge, a lot of understanding of technology. But you have the same exact problems that I'm sure a lot of folks that enter pre-sales have, where I talked too much. I over-explained everything. It took me 10 minutes to answer a simple question. I was afraid of conflict. I was afraid to be wrong. So I would caveat everything and say, it depends, and give 17 different answers. And really, I didn't tell stories, and I didn't have brevity mastered. So what I talk about today, I want to help you all with storytelling and with brevity. So when we think about this, why is storytelling important? Well, in the past, obviously it's important, but I think it's getting more and more important. And to illustrate that, I'm going to show you some information, but I wanted to first launch a poll, and Sammy's going to help out with this. She's going to put a poll up on screen, and I want to know, is your company in the Gartner Magic Quadrant right now?
They are coming in. I don't know if you can see them, but
I can't. I'm curious where we're at.
okay, so we have 64% of people in this session have responded so far. So maybe we'll give everybody just a couple more seconds, and then I'll go ahead and end it, and it'll show like the responses to everybody. So
yeah, I love these chats here. Eric Burns, brevity is clarity. Amen, brother.
All right, we got 75% participation. So I'm going to go ahead and end it, and I'm going to share the results. Can you guys see that?
This is awesome. All right, so 86 folks yes, 41 no, and 57 unsure. That's fantastic. Okay. All right, so if you don't know, it's probably because you don't know what the Gartner Magic Quadrant is. So it's basically, they go about and they rank. Gartner's a research firm that ranks companies based on and puts them into a quadrant on the leaders versus the laggards. And so I pulled 4 magic quadrants, and I'm going to share them up on screen. So the first one is, actually tell me, we'll do that one later. I pulled up the magic quadrants for CRM, and this is includes your Salesforces, your others. So if anybody sells CRM, drop it in the chat. I'm curious. But if you look at this magic quadrant, what's very interesting is there are 6 leaders. I'm not really sure how there are 6 leaders in a category, but that's very interesting. That means that if you are a leader in the magic quadrant, you only have to beat 5 other competitors in order to win the customer's business. But if you're not a leader in there and you're down here, you've got to beat all of these people and you've got to beat the leaders. Pretty daunting task. So how about another one? Let's look at low code. Well, look at that. Another 6 leaders. Okay, well, not a whole lot of differentiation here. How about this one? BI and analytics. Oh, this is great. So there's only 3. So anybody in the BI and analytics space? If so, the good news is there's only 3 in the leaders quadrant. So you only have to beat Salesforce and Microsoft and Click, and 2 of those are 2 of the biggest software companies in history. So good luck with that one. Yes, we've got Silvio's in BI. It's a super difficult market, but that's it. You've got all this competition in here. So BI and analytics sounds good. Okay, how about security? Any security folks on here? Drop it in the chat. You've got 6 vendors up there that are top in security. And here's the other problem with security. Anyone who sells into this industry knows that the customers don't tell you any of their problems. They make you guess these things because they can't. So now the only real way to differentiate is to tell a story. So this is just part of the reason why storytelling is becoming more important. When I joined and I was a sales engineer, there were only 2 folks in the top leaders of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. So I only had to beat 1 competitor, and I was pretty good at that, just with the POCs, the demos, and the other things we did. But I wish I had understood and learned storytelling back then. So the market's getting more difficult, and I want to give you guys ways to go about differentiating. So let's take this for a second. Let's say, for instance, we are selling, and the customer is thinking, after they look at this Magic Quadrant, which vendor do I pick? So if you're like me, or an analytical buyer, or an engineer, which is a lot of times IT is involved in these purchases, you'll probably do this. Let me know if any of you have seen this before. You'll have a list of the vendors up on the top, and then you'll have a list of all the features that the products have and what you need. And the buyers go and they create this chart, and then they go through and they get a demo from vendor 1. And it says, yep, checks that box, checks that. Oh, yeah, vendor 1 has everything that we need. That's great. Let's make sure we check on vendor 2, though. Maybe they do things a little bit differently. So now we do, vendor 2 has all the things we need. And vendor 3, and you get the point. Not only are you bored by the time you get to this point because you've seen the same demo, but you don't really know how anyone differentiates. So question, drop it in the chat. How do you decide when you have vendors that are looking like this? What does the customer do? What is their decision criteria? Price, trust, I love that. Price, cost, POV, great. People, service, success, training, partnership. Yes, it's everything else. So price, price, price. I love it, Jeff. Brand, yes, trust. It really comes down to, you're looking at either trust, you're looking at POCs, or you're looking at really what we're talking about here with trust. Is story is a great way to build trust. So the way that I used to do this back in the day was we would just POC, because we knew we could POC or POV, whichever you want to call it. And that's a way to show the differentiation between these two. But you can make it simple to buy, you can increase trust, you can do POCs, you can make it more technical. But a lot of folks don't want to do this stuff. So we got another one, drop it in the chat here, or which would you rather? Would you rather do a POC, or would you rather tell a story? And I don't think it's that simple, but I'm just curious what people's response is. We got a POC question mark. It sounds like somebody's not sold, Ted. Depends who I'm competing against. Yes, I would agree with that completely. Yeah, it's not a, we got a laugh from Rob Wald here. I didn't see it, but Rob, I love your comments on my LinkedIn stuff. So I'm gonna have to read that one afterwards. All right, love this. So yeah, the proof of concept can definitely work, but typically you want to take the path of least resistance. So now my next question is, how often are you all telling stories? So Sammy, can you put that one up? I'm curious what folks are doing right now.
All right, it's up. Giving people a couple minutes here, minute or two.
Rob Wall, not enough. I love that. Every day, Kavita, awesome. All the time, Melanie. And all day, every day. Love it. Pam done. Tell more stories. That's it. Heard that at Demo Fest. Love it, Pam. Glad you're here.
All right, so it looks like we're about 70%. I'm going to go ahead and close it and show everybody the results. There we go.
All right, we got a lot of once in a while. There's a few nevers. I'm curious for the never folks. Why never? Is it because you don't know how, or you have banished it? Because I did that for a little bit too. That's part of the reason for this title. I said, you know what, storytelling is for marketers who don't have technical chops. And you know what? That was a wrong opinion at the time. I wish I knew more, and I wish I knew how to tell story brief, concisely, and to the point. So I love this. Looks like everybody's incorporating a little bit of storytelling, which is awesome. All right. So for today's session, I want to give you a skill boost. That is the goal of Alpha Pre-Sales. That is the goal of what I'm going to do today. So the challenge I have is I often do not do presentations in about 30 minutes like this. I do 2-3 day training. So this is what I call the core four. And these are the core four skills that drive sales outcomes. Now, you all might be familiar with some of these, but ultimately, these are skills that are indicative of sales engineers and sales reps, but they're just needed in different quantities. So the first skill is knowledge. You have to know what you're selling, and you have to understand the product. Otherwise, you have no real value to the customer. Sales engineers are usually loaded with this. The smarter you get, usually the worse you get at clarity. That was my problem when you were looking at the former developer. And then you've got to be great at discovery. And then you've got to be really strong at leadership and helping the customer make a decision. So the reason why I train in the way that I do, and we focus a lot on leadership, is because if you're a leader, you're out in front of the customer and you're not reacting to the customer. You can then ask better questions and do better discovery. When you do better discovery, that means you can talk more clearly and concisely because you know what the customer's problem is. Ask the right questions. You don't have to say it depends and give them 17 different options. And then if you're more clear and concise, makes all that brilliant product knowledge that some of you have developed over years, and it makes that stuff more effective. So this is what we typically do. And the goal here is I want to increase sales, and I want to help you decrease the amount of activities you need to do. So you might have to do POCs still, and that's fine, but we want to do less POCs. We want to do shorter POCs. And story is a great way to do that. So for today's session, what we're going to do is I'm going to focus specifically on a couple of areas here. Let's see here. This is the clarity bucket, which is where we're going to be spending a lot of time today. It's how do we tell a short, concise, to the point story. So you all are going to get a little skill boost in clarity today. So I'm going to do this quick 2-minute drill. And I'm doing this, and I call this the 2-minute drill because I posted a video on LinkedIn. If you're not following me, please do. I put out plenty of content for pre-sales folks. So I recorded this video on LinkedIn. Some of you may have seen it. I was selling this Coca-Cola. And it was about a 2-minute video on LinkedIn. And I got a message afterwards from a sales engineer that said, that was more value in 2 minutes than I got in 16 hours of sales training. And so I said, okay, you know what? Maybe I should do this as a repeat for anyone who hasn't seen this. So I want you all to take a second. And I actually want you to do this. I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that it is a hot summer day in the middle of August, or if you're in South America, maybe a different time, but it's summer. The sun is baking down on you. It's about 90 degrees. Maybe you're outside running around playing with the kids, and you're sweating and you're starting to feel that sweat bead up on your arms. And the kids are having a great time. They're yelling and screaming, no problems whatsoever. But you're starting to get thirsty. You're parched. You're starting to sweat. You're getting a little sticky. You can open your eyes now, and you decide to walk inside. So you walk inside, and a great friend's in there, and they've got this glass of ice cubes that they give you. And then they hand you this Coca-Cola. And you crack open that Coca-Cola, and you pour it in to these ice cubes, and it fizzes up for a while, and you let it simmer back down, and then you take a sip of that. And I'm not going to do that because I'm sick. So good. How good does that taste? Now, can anyone taste the Coke right now? Does anyone want a Coke right now? Drop it in the chat. If I do that properly, I don't like Coke. I love it. I got a me. Coke or Pepsi was what I put out there. Yes. All right. You've got an IPA. Yeah, well, it's early, Clark, but I love that. Rum, please. I love this audience. Fantastic. So what you're doing here is you're creating an environment where you're introducing a problem or you're introducing a current state, and then you're bringing the customer to a beautiful future. Water, please, Sarah Jones. I agree. I'm not a big fan of soda after I've been running around, but you get the point. So I want to break that down real quick and talk about what I just did. And as soon as we do this, we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about the competitor to Salesforce, which is Revenue Force. But here I'll give you a quick rundown of what I did. I introduced a story, and I did that in two parts. There's a character, and then there's a journey. And the character is you, me, whoever is out there running around playing outside. And the journey is from this situation where you're parched and sweaty to now you're not parched, your thirst is quenched, and you're happy because you're inside drinking a Coke. And what I did with the imagery, the imagine, is I'm trying to pull you further over into this parched state. Because there's a reason why I didn't ask you in the beginning, do you want a Coca-Cola right now? If I just started off the story and asked you want a Coca-Cola, some of you would say yes, some of you would say no. But when I introduce all the imagery and create that environment, I'm pulling you toward this environment of being parched. And that, yes, it is a tall blog, Mark. And then I'm going to create that contrast, and that's where the value is. So when you think about it, the value of the product actually changes based on the situation that it's presented in. So you want to pull the person over to here, because then when you get them to this pleasurable future state, it's more satisfying because they just were running around. I'll give you another example. I got a Hershey's bar right here. Anyone want a Hershey's bar? Some probably chocolate fans. But what if I gave you the Coca-Cola first, and now I gave you the Hershey's bar? I got yes from Maria. Maria, do you still want chocolate after soda? Maybe, maybe not, but probably a little bit less so. Mr. Beast bar, yes, love it. And that's where you're creating contrast. So this is an important concept, and I use the Coca-Cola as an example to talk about contrast. The value in your product is not in the actual product itself. And I see this a lot with sales engineers and solutions consultants. You talk about solution, 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 solution. But me as the customer, I don't even know what the problem is. So I can't even see it as a solution. It is not a solution, because if there's not a problem, how can you even define what a solution is? A solution to what? So that's where you're creating that contrast. So now we're going to take this example, and I want to apply it to Revenue Force. So Revenue Force is this fictitious company I came up with, very clever name. And they sell a CRM product. So this is where we're going to get some more interaction here. And I want to start to develop a story. So the character, if you're selling Revenue Force, or you're in the CRM space, or you just want to play along here, who are the likely people that you are selling to if you're selling Revenue Force? Who is the audience? Who is the buyer? VP of sales, love it. I'll call that CRO as well, because it's a similar persona, but definitely different. Sales leaders, VP, yes, RevOps, I got that. Rich guys who don't have a Coke to drink. Head of marketing, potentially. Sales leaders. Yeah, you know who's not on this list or haven't seen yet is the sales rep. Why? Because it's pretty much the bane of our existence. So CCO, I love it. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to create the character in the story. So this is step one in storytelling. Step two is you want to create this current state, or you can just talk about the problems that this person has. So let's do that real quick. VP of sales, what are the problems that a VP of sales or CRO is facing? You don't even have to think about what this, what revenue force solves for, but like, what is the thing they're facing? Yes, Josh, forecasting. Sales cycle durations. Good staff, great. Bad data. Bad data. I like that, Janice, and I'm going to add it into RevOps because they usually care about that even more than anyone else. Lack of visibility, lead conversion to sales. Yeah, Mark, I love it. Happy years, Peter. SWAT, market forces, pipeline gen. Yes. All right. All right. And then what is the future solution? I'll call this future state or ideal future state. What would happen in their ideal future state? Predictability. I like it. Clean data, Janice. Yes. Logan, revenue. That's it, Steve. Sales, baby. Salespeople would follow the process 100% of the time. Yes, Michael. Love this. Happy customers. Yeah, fantastic. So what we're trying to do here is I'm trying to create the framework for you to have a journey where you go from a problematic current state to an ideal future state. And then where you then go and take this is these are the elements of story, and you can embellish it. And marketing tends to do that, and they create very long white papers that talk about all these things. But the challenge that marketers have, which is different from a salesperson, is a marketer has to appeal to a lot of different audiences, and it's a really hard job. So a lot of their stuff ends up being generic. So when you think about marketing, it's one-to-many people often, or maybe they do it one-to-one and they try to scale that out. But with sales or sales engineering, it's one person to one person. It's one individual person in that meeting that's sitting across from you in the discussion, or they're watching in on the demo with you. And so you've got to create connections with each one of these people as you go through. So when you're in that situation, this is why this is sort of storytelling for sales and sales engineering. You've got to come up with a story that's going to resonate. So I'm going to use an example here, and you may or may not have this example, but let's say you have a buyer whose name is Mary, and you have a customer whose name is Doug, and Mary is, let's say she's a sales rep, and Doug's a sales rep as well, AE. What you do when you're in a meeting with Mary is, let's say you're the sales engineer. Let's put this really into context. You're the sales engineer. You're halfway through your demo. Your demo, you were planning on hitting on revenue, clean data, a bunch of other stuff. You get to the point where you're on forecasting or just updating information, whatever it is. You would say something like, okay, I'm going to transition into the forecasting bit or whatever area. Hey, Mary, do you have a weekly forecast meeting? Yep, every day on Friday. You think, you don't seem super enthused about that. No, it's not something I look forward to every day. Yeah, I hear that a lot. All right, so one of the things that sales reps can't stand is they can't stand getting ready for meetings. It's the forecast meeting, which is the bane of their existence. So I know there's some sales reps on here, and I know there's some former sales reps on here. Steve, I'm looking at you. And literally the worst day is the day before the forecast meeting because you got to sit there and clean up all of your notes. It's miserable. So that's the problem, right? They don't want to do that. So one of the things that you can do is you want to elicit that emotional response from folks. So what you can do is, when I was a sales rep, the Thursday night, I always had a recurring calendar invite. It was at 5 o'clock, and I'd have to update all of my Salesforce notes. And I'd spend like an hour and a half just updating Salesforce notes because I wasn't good about doing it during the week. So that was miserable. And then I do it, and then I get into the meeting on Friday, and hopefully you don't have to talk all that much. You just tell them a couple of the deals, the latest status. You say, read Salesforce, and you're good. But that is a really annoying part of your week as a sales rep. So if you're in this meeting with Mary and you or want to go and message some of your key features or functionality in Revenue Force, what you would do is you would say something like, so we have a customer, Doug, who tells us that he told me that on his Thursday night, he would spend about an hour and a half updating all of his notes in the CRM system. And he said it was the bane of his existence. He said he would sit there for an hour and a half updating all this data. And he would show up to the meeting on Friday morning, and it would only take maybe 3 minutes where he'd be talking. But he had to spend all this time on Thursday night just to make sure that they wasn't going to get in trouble on the next day, because you had serious consequences if you weren't up to date on your notes. Management would get seriously angry. So he said that was the worst thing about him. Well, one of the things, and as you're saying this, Mary is thinking, oh my God, that's my Thursday night. That's exactly the situation that I'm in. So what you do is you just hook her. And before you even actually get to the explanation of what you're doing, Mary's like, this is exactly my life. I'm bought in. This is exactly my problem. And so now she's listening and you have her attention. She's sold regardless of what you're even going to sell. Then you go and you talk about Doug. And let's say your product, you've had this big list of features that your product has, and you want to get into this recording or transcription feature. The way to do that is you say, Doug used to spend an hour and a half updating Salesforce. Now he says that he grabs his phone after every meeting, he pulls it up, and he just records the next steps, the meeting notes, and the updated close date. And then through our AI, which everybody has right now, it is just going to update automatically all that stuff. So he said that now he doesn't even do Thursday night updates of his CRM. He said he does everything right after the meeting because it's so easy for him. So Doug's went from an hour and a half of doing these updates to now on Thursday nights, he's hanging out, watching Netflix and drinking a cocktail, rum and Coke for the folks on the line. So what I did there is I created that contrast where Doug, the buyer right here, who's in the same situation that your buyer is in, went from this really miserable current state to this beautiful future state. Let's try to do another one. VP of sales. They're miserable about forecasting is terrible for them. Now, you can think about this a little bit more. The forecasting, like everyone knows, but if you can make the pain and the problem more real for them, it would be this. A VP of sales, what's going on in their head is they just want to know whether they're going to hit the number or not. Obviously, they want to hit the number, but they just want the predictability, because there was another persona that came up earlier. It's the CFO. The CFO is asking the VP of sales, are we going to hit this month? Are we going to hit this quarter? Are we going to hit this quarter? And it's constant on their mind. And so the way to go and tell a story is to say, yeah, you probably sit there and your CFO talks to you every week to see if you're going to hit the number. And because your forecast is all over the place, it's really hard to know whether or not you can do it. And for you, you probably don't even care as much if you're going to hit the number or not. You just want to make sure that you can do it so you don't lose your reputation. So you do that and you create that environment where now you're building that connection with the person you're talking to, the VP of sales. Then you go and explain the product and what you can offer, and now it's much more predictable for them. So that's the situation where you need to bring folks into this problematic current state before you jump into the future state. So that's how we would do that for Revenue Force. And I highly recommend this exercise where you list out the buyer, individual person that you're talking to, the problem that that person is facing, and then the solution. And I don't see a lot of sales engineers do this. They typically just say solution, solution, solution. And you know what? The hero of the story, if you will, looks like the product. And no one wants to buy the product. They want to buy a journey from hanging out and spending an hour and a half doing updates to sitting and watching Netflix, drinking a rum and Coke. So that's where you want to sell that journey, because the product comes with it. All right. In the chat, let's hear, people want to buy business outcomes. I love it. In what situations can you tell stories here? Drop it in the chat, because this is not just features. Learning about problems. Excellent, Rob. This is a discovery tool. People don't realize that. We don't have time to talk about that today, but that's a huge benefit of storytelling. It is a discovery tool. Customer journey. Discovery. Yes, Jerome. We've had a genuine experience and can add value. Demo. Yes, absolutely. Mostly at the bar. Impact. Creating after the demo. When they raise an objection. Yep. Any situation. Yeah, you can include them anywhere. Sharing peer experiences, use cases. I love it, Ash. Great way of calling their baby ugly. Yes, you will tell us. Okay, this is a great comment. Yes, Eric, I love this. So if folks are reading, read Eric's comment here. Stories are a great way to call somebody else's baby ugly so that the customer who knows that their baby is ugly then wants to fix the problem. Versus when you say, hey, you said that you suck at forecasting and you're terrible at this and your information, your data is a mess. It's insulting. Versus if you just tell people that other people have that problem, they're like, oh yeah, well, you know, we're a little bit better than that, but we kind of have some similar issues, maybe, sort of. And they're sold. They may not be telling you, but they're sold. Awesome stuff. All right. So I want to talk, I don't know if we have time for, I don't think we'll have time for the 5-paragraph demo. So we'll get into that at another point. But what I wanted to do here is I wanted to give you a way to increase the clarity component of your skill set. And before I get into this, I want to just raise one issue that I've heard a lot of folks say. And it's that I don't have good customer stories. So if you don't have good customer stories, what you do is you take that generic character and you take them on a journey. And let's say you don't have a Doug. If you don't have a Doug, you genericize, if you will, the story and you say, I talk to a lot of sales reps that say the following. And then you can get them from a situation of this is what their problem is. And if you do it right, the customer is going to say, yes, that's exactly my problem, to here's what the solution is. So it doesn't have to be a specific customer story. I know there's a lot of folks that are probably at companies that don't have a great customer story record yet. If you're not there yet, just make it generic and talk to the persona rather than naming the individual person. Okay. So getting back to this, you've got, before we started, this is the typical SE skills that I see. They're extremely high in product knowledge. No problem there. It's clarity that is tough because we try to say everything. It's way easier to be brief by stating the problem and then bringing them to the solution. What typically I see is we explain all the features and concepts and we over communicate. And the problem is we're not addressing the problem. So that's where storytelling, if you do it right, is talk about the problem and then take them to the solution, or take them into the ideal future state and the solutions on the way there. The clarity bit is the area that's usually a little bit weaker. Discovery is usually so-so. And then leadership, I usually find to be a little bit lower just because folks haven't flexed that muscle. So after today's session, if you incorporate what we talked about, the goal is that we could give you a little bit of a boost here in the clarity. Just have problem or current state to future state based solutions. That's kind of storytelling 101, if you will. Where I would like to go is in the future, I'm trying to build a community where sales engineers and whoever wants can learn and build their skills. That's the mission behind Alpha Pre-Sales. So if you like this type of conversation, if you like this medium that I do, please join my community. So there's a barcode over here, and I'll talk a little bit about it. It's going to take you to my website, alphapresales.com/community. There is a form that you can fill out, just your name and your email address. Make sure you verify your email so I know I'm not getting spam. Then once you're there, what I plan to do is push you content around the things that you're interested in. So eventually I'm going to have a survey that you'll fill out and you'll say, Rew, I care about discovery, but storytelling is not for me. I don't want to hear about it. Then I'm going to send you information about discovery or leadership or whatever it is. If you tell me storytelling is exactly what you want, then I'm going to send you information on that. And it may be video content like this. It may be when I'm doing another training. It may be just LinkedIn videos. We'll see where that goes. But ultimately, I want you to join the community so that I can provide this to you. I do my business with big companies. And so for individual sales engineers, I want you to get better at skills. And I haven't seen a lot of avenues for that out in the public. So please join the community. If you do that, to recap, that barcode is up on the top right. You can go and have that anytime. And then to recap the structure, this is where when you're thinking about implementing storytelling, all you have to think about is the character and the journey. Remember that the journey is the most important bit, and specifically the problems and the situations you're in is the most important there, because that's what creates contrast. The situations that you can tell a story in is your demo can be a story. In fact, most demos are sort of a story, right? You can have a feature story where you're talking about just the individual features of Revenue Force or whatever product you're selling. If you want to talk about the recording, if you just say we do recording, no one knows how they're going to use that. So tell a story of how Doug used it or how other customers are using it. So now it's more impactful. You can tell your story or your company's story. I get a little bit of that today. You heard about the geek that was sitting there slinging code, and eventually I got a little bit better at this type of stuff. And then you can tell a customer story. And these are super impactful. This is what most people think of with storytelling, but don't limit it to that. There's a lot more that you can do. All right, last bit. In terms of your one takeaway from this, I want you to think about, forgive me, I lost my train of thought. These are some examples of storytellers that I've gone through my training. This is Mike. He said the biggest value in this was actually not in the stories. It was cutting all the superfluous language out of his communication so he could get to the point. This is Lee. He talked about how their confidence of the sales engineers was much stronger, and they're leading now because they know a lot about what they're actually talking about. And we've got Alex over here. He said he told a story, and it wasn't even a customer story. He was just telling the situation that the person that he was selling to was in. And he said the woman got up, he said, in the middle of the meeting, said, "Oh my God, I feel so heard right now." And then this one is from Rishav, who said his biggest issue was not him selling. It was when he would leave the room, he was afraid about what the conversations were going on outside. So he said he was afraid of the telephone game. And I bring this up because I want to thank Consensus. There's a great way to avoid the telephone game problem, and it is to purchase Consensus, which will help you to record videos so that you don't have to rely on your prospects to communicate it. You can do it in a video, and you can have that permeate the organization. So thank you, Sammy, and thank you, Consensus, for this. To recap your one thing, it's just problem and contrast. Problems lead to contrast, and you connect with me on LinkedIn, and I talk a lot about this, so I can give you a little bit more info there. So we're going to get into sort of questions, Q&A pretty soon here. Yeah, Dave. Yes, Consensus is awesome. To recap, join the community. Tell your sales leaders and sales enablement. If you like this, especially the virtual format, I do trainings for sales kickoffs. I can also do them live. But a lot of times the sales enablement team is looking for somebody for sales engineers because we all get grouped into this big old group with all the sales reps, and then it's awards and a bunch of things that relate to AEs and not to SEs. So I'd love to be a part of your sales kickoff if at all possible. And then consider Alpha Pre-Sales for consultative sales training. I custom build the curriculum for every client, depending on what industry they're in, what they're interested in, and it's Spanish Tapa style. So I say that because you've all been through those trainings where it is 4 days of a ton of information, and probably 2 hours of it is relevant to the sales engineers. So we're not doing it that way. The way that we do it is if you want to get better at storytelling, great, we're going to talk about that. If it's value selling, if it's leadership, if it's emotional intelligence, we've got workshops for all that type of stuff. So questions for you all. What is something that you will remember from today? Drop it in the chat. What storytellers do you like? What are your thoughts on storytelling? Do you still have the same opinion on storytelling? Did you learn something today? Drop it in the chat and let's hear it. And then Sammy, as that's going on, I think maybe we'll jump into Q&A. Do we have any questions there?
Yeah, so we did have one question earlier, very beginning. How are you doing the whiteboarding?
Aaron Morin called her baby ugly. So how I do the whiteboarding, I have a glass board in front of me, and the camera's on the other side, straight in front of me. So I'm looking at you all there, and I draw on this glass board, and it's illuminated through lights. So it's very funky, and there's a whole lot of software and a whole lot of other things involved. So the setup's pretty elaborate, but it creates an incredible experience for sales engineers who want to learn this, because you'll see it. We don't do slides at Alpha Pre-Sales. That's not my jam. No sales engineers want to look at slides. So this is how we do all of our training.
Cool. Okay, any advice on storytelling for one-to-many audiences where it's difficult to tailor the story to a targeted audience?
Yeah. I'm trying to think about the different situations that would come up. So, for example, I worked with a client that had webinars, and the webinar situation is one of those where you don't know the audience. Like I didn't right now. I had a feeling that we were primarily individual contributor sales engineers. So most of the content was that on how do we have a demo or feature specific story. If you've got a big audience like that, I would just ask, what is the outcome that you want coming out of that? Because when you look at it and you try to please everyone, you're not going to get the outcome you want. For me, I'm not trying to attract, marketers with this presentation. I'm trying to make sales engineers better. So if I talk to marketing about how to do marketing, that's just time taken away from the sales engineers. So the question I would ask you is, what outcome do you want out of this one-to-many folks? Do you want someone specifically to buy? Do you want to change? Like, what's the intention or what's the goal behind it? You got to think about that and you got to prioritize it. There's no silver bullet for a mixed audience like that.
Cool.
Sell the journey. I love this. 10 words or less on every slide. Absolute best way. Yes, Ryan. Let's see.
Cool. If you guys do have questions for Rew, again, drop them. Feel free to drop them. Yes. Will this session be recorded? It's my most popular question. The answer is yes. We'll share it with you guys in the next day or two.
Got a question here from Jasmine. Can we use the think scale in our favor to make the realize this is a harder process? Absolutely, Jasmine. So this is a great question Jasmine put in the chat. She said, what if you're selling to Doug, but Doug's on a tight budget? You're selling and you want to sell Doug's bridge, but they're on a tight budget and they want to build it themselves. Can you use the think scale? Yeah, I think the think scale applies in that you still want to talk about Doug because you give them the idea that that's the future that they're going to go for. But then to your point, Jasmine, I think the biggest benefit there is you have to understand, or you have to help them to think through how much is going to be involved in custom building it themselves. So a great way to talk about that is to go ask Doug why he didn't custom build it. Because Doug was probably thinking the same things that your buyer is thinking. And if you try to pitch them on why they should do it themselves, it's pitchy. Versus if you say, Doug bought this because he knew that he could custom build a bridge, but he knew that putting it together, the safety, the security, and everything else was going to cost just as much time, and he wasn't going to get the outcome he wants. Now it's not you pitching, it's you talking about Doug. It's a great question on the think scale. Put it all together at the end. I love it, Maddie. Will this session be recorded?
Yes. Yes, and
I
yes.
love all the comments I hear on brevity. Melanie, the ugly baby analogy will stick in my head forever. Great strategy. I love it. Brevity. Good stuff. All right. Looks like we're about up on time. Any last minute questions, Sammy?
Haven't seen any come through the Q&A. So yeah, we're just nearing the end of the session here. If you guys do have any additional questions, you think of stuff, you can always, Rew is available on LinkedIn. I'm sure he'd love to connect with you guys and for you to join his community. And then the last thing I will say again is just make sure you're sign up for our emails and follow us on LinkedIn so that we can get you all that information for our upcoming DemoFest X events. Thank you so much, Rew, for lending us your time and expertise. What an awesome session. Tons of value. I know a lot of people in the chat were just going off about how valuable this was. So thank you so much. And for everybody else, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.